Welcome back to Be the Best You, and I'm here today with Jordan Syatt. Jordan is a strength and nutrition coach and owner of Syatt Fitness, a digital influencer with more than 600,000 followers on Instagram as of March 2020, and the former trainer of well-known businessman and social media influencer Gary Vaynerchuk. Jordan is also a world record-holding powerlifter in several categories and completed a 4 times bodyweight deadlift in January 2015, lifting 530 pounds at just 130 pounds body weight. He's been featured on a number of well-known media publications like CNN, The Huffington Post, and Schwarzenegger.com. Jordan is also a self-proclaimed 27th degree black belt in chugging coffee. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Jordan has become, somewhat of a fitness celebrity over the past several years and has become more well-known since becoming the personal trainer and nutrition coach for Gary Vaynerchuk, who, if you don't know who he is a celebrity among entrepreneurs with millions of followers online. However, I was telling Jordan this off camera too, I actually started following him probably about 6 years ago when I found his blog and saw that he had been an intern for Eric Cressy, who was my go-to resource, and I'm sure a lot of people's go-to resource for all strength training information when I first became a trainer in 2012. And when you look at Jordan's social media pages now, you'll see these entertaining posts where Jordan blends his strength training and nutrition knowledge with some humor. However, I don't think a lot of people realize Jordan is an extremely knowledgeable and well-researched strength coach. He interned at some world-renowned facilities like Westside Barbell with the legendary Louis Simmons, and at Cressy Sports Performance with Eric Cressy, who now oversees the strength and conditioning departments for the New York Yankees. And I remember I was on his email list a few years ago, and he was talking about, getting up at 4 a.m. every day. And this was when he was like in his early 20s. So he always had this amazing work ethic. And yet he has this interesting blend of knowledge and humor, and is, in my opinion, one of the best people to follow on Instagram. And I say he's like an influencer, but he's really a coach. And no matter what he's done in his life, he's always adapted to the situation and has done really well. And Jordan is, I believe, you're 28, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Exactly. So 28. So Jordan, I mean, you're in your late 20s now, and you've already, achieved quite a bit. And so I just want to know from you, how did you develop this incredible work ethic at such an early age to master everything you've tackled so far in life?
Man, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I appreciate all the kind words. You're incredibly generous. I'll say this. Growing up, I was in special education classes. Like I was like in SPED. That's what they called it. And I vividly remember like feeling like I was this dumbest kid in class, the dumbest kid in school. And like, I'm not like a very smart guy. I'm just not. I'm not like I'm not like the guy who knows all the random facts and who can just like, I'm just not the smartest guy at all. I vividly remember a time when I was super upset about having to take tests and exams in a separate room, and they would give me extra time and a half. They allowed me like a 4x6 note card and time and a half extra. And I remember just being like, I don't want this. Like, I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to be dumb. I don't want to get all these like extra whatever just because of whatever stuff I have in my head. And I remember telling my mom, like, I don't want this stuff. And she probably gave me some of the best advice that I've ever gotten in my life. And like, I sort of reiterate this to my audience on a very regular basis in different ways, in different scenarios. But basically she was like, listen, like, you might not be as smart as the other kids, which is okay. All that means is you're just going to have to work harder. And that was it. Like, she didn't sugarcoat it. And I think it's really important. She didn't say like, oh no, you're just as smart. She said, listen, you might not be as smart. So it means you're going to have to work harder. And I'll never forget that. And I think as I've gotten older and as a coach, I've adopted that strategy more, because I think a lot of people and parents and coaches, they like to coddle and they just want to say, no, you're great as you are. You're perfect as you are. Just stay as you are. And I think it's the fastest way to make sure that you don't improve. And that, like, for me, I really like the idea of treating someone in a way that allows them to live up to their own highest expectation of themselves. Where if you treat them as if like they're great right now and they can't get any better, then they're not going to get any better. But if you treat them as if like they're amazing, but there's still room to improve, they'll want to improve. And so for me, I think that probably is where it stemmed from. I don't know, but I would imagine that from a very young age being told I might not be as smart, but it's okay as long as I work harder. That's probably where it stemmed from.
Love it. And I didn't even know some of that stuff about you. And that's so incredible that you have overcome a lot of these challenges to become, what you've become today. And I want to, get more into your background too. But, I since it's March 2020, we're kind of all dealing with it. It's hard to ignore the question right now. Like, the coronavirus craze is sweeping the world. Like, it's affecting businesses, economies, families, everyone. So talk to me a little bit about like how that's kind of affected you and your business and what you're doing about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the vast majority of my business is my fitness membership. I call it my inner circle, and basically it's a very, very low cost. It's $24.99 a month, and there's workouts and nutrition guidelines and exercise videos. I think the best part of it is the group community. There's a massive group community that we have. But I mean, it's taken a hit for sure. I mean, when people lose their jobs, when people have to cut back expenses, like they're going to take away this type of a thing. So it's definitely taken a hit. There have been a significant number of cancellations, significantly more than usual. But for me, I think right now what a lot of people do in times like this is when they panic is they go, okay, well, I need to make more money. So I'm going to sell, I'm going to sell, I'm going to sell, I'm going to sell. And I think right now is the literal worst time to try and sell and sell and sell and sell, because everybody is in panic mode. Every single one of us, we're all panicking. We're all trying to save our money. So for me, what I'm doing right now is I'm just giving everything away for free. I'm sending daily workouts to I have a text community list where if you text my my number, then I send out a free workout every day you can do at home. Most of my content that I'm putting out on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook right now it's educational, like with exercise technique and certain things, but it's mainly funny, just to lighten the mood, try and bring a smile to your day. For me right now, I think as someone who is blessed enough to have a large audience, my main goal is to help people feel better. I'll just bring a light to their day in some way, whether it's giving them a free workout, making them laugh, making them smile, teaching them something. That's it. Yes, like financially, I think this is hurting everybody right now, but I don't think it's the time from a business perspective to try and sell. I think now more than ever, we need to take our responsibility to help people and to help our neighbor, help our friends, help our family. And then when the time comes to start selling again and making more money, I think that will present itself very obviously as things start to get better.
That is a perspective that I haven't heard anyone else really say, that right now is not the time to be selling. Right now is the time to be, right now you're providing lots of people value, so that obviously this is a long-term play in the future. If you are providing them with a ton of value right now, I mean, I would expect that many of those people are probably going to want to continue to follow you and work with you in the future.
I hope so. And to be honest, I think my biggest advantage with all of this is, let's say all of this ends and I make a pitch to join the inner circle or buy a product or whatever it is, and people who got free workouts for months don't buy it. I'm not going to be mad. I think that's probably my biggest advantage, is that I'm not expecting anybody to buy from me just because I've helped them now. I'm helping people now because I love helping people. I'm helping people now because I like being a coach and I like making content. I like doing this stuff. If on the other end, people end up buying it, amazing. That's fantastic. But my success isn't predicated, and my happiness isn't predicated on someone buying something just because I gave them a handful of free workouts.
That is a gold nugget right there. Hope everyone was listening right there. Jordan just says he is focused on providing value to people first and genuinely enjoys what he does so much that if he gets paid, obviously he wants to make a living and income, but if he gets paid for it, that's not the most important part. The most important part is that he is fulfilled by what he does. Love
100%.
it. Love it. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jordan. So I want to get more into kind of, some more tactical, strategic stuff for people here. But I first want to start with your story, because I believe that gives people context. So you talked a little bit about it already, but take me through, your childhood, like what things were like when you were growing up, where you grew up, and kind of how you got through like middle school and high school.
Yeah, so I grew up in a town outside of Boston. just in a suburb of Boston. And I wrestled from when I was 8 years old. Wrestling is how I really got started in fitness. I played soccer and played baseball and did a whole bunch of other things, but wrestling was like my major sport. I ended up making varsity as a freshman in high school and being a junior out for the varsity spot. I had to cut a lot of weight, so I was cutting from 112 to 103 every week for my my weight division. And basically, I had to figure out, all right, how do I lose weight and gain strength at the same time? Because from a wrestling perspective, technically I was a good wrestler. Endurance-wise, I was a good wrestler. But as a freshman going up against juniors and seniors, my strength was nowhere near where it needed to be. So I figured out, okay, so I got to figure out how do I lose weight and get stronger. So I applied to an internship at a gym near me, basically in the same town. I was like, hey, can I come and I'll take the trash out, I'll clean the floors. Can I just like intern and work for you? And the first gym I applied to actually said, no, our clients don't want a high school kid walking around our gym. And so then I applied to another gym, or before I did that, I was denied that gym and that internship. And I went home and I was devastated. And my mom was like, did you get it? And I said, nope. And I was just like super upset. And she was like, so now what? And I was like, what do you mean now what? And she was like, aren't you going to apply to another one? And it's so funny because at that, I hadn't even thought about that possibility that I could just apply to another one. So then I remember I called a gym in Newton, which was a town nearby. And I was like, can I do the same thing? Take the trash out, clean the floors. They gave me the internship and I ended up working there all through high school. And that's really how I got a passion for coaching. I remember my first ever client, he was a 68-year-old guy named Fred. And he just wanted to be able to lift his grandson up without hurting his shoulders. And as a young kid, 14, 15-year-old kid, my main goal was to be a better wrestler and look good naked. So, and you know, you have very little perspective at that age. So I was just like, doesn't everyone want to look good naked? So for my first client, literally to basically tell me all I want to be able to do is lift my grandson up without hurting my shoulders, it immediately like shook me. And it was the very foundation and beginning of understanding there's so many different goals and reasons why people are doing health and fitness. And I was lucky to get that experience before I was a sophomore in high school, whereas most coaches don't get that experience until they're graduated college.
Love it. And it sounds like obviously your mom has had a big impact on your life. Like you're like, okay, I got rejected from one place. Why not try another place? And then you just worked really hard and eventually these opportunities seem to just present themselves to you through your work ethic.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. When I got home after realizing I didn't get the internship, my mom didn't give me an opportunity to sulk or complain or whine or dwell in my unhappiness or sadness or disappointment. So there was no, oh, sweetie, like, it's okay. Like, you know, let's go out, get some ice cream. She was like, now what? It was just those, like, now, what are you going to do now? Yeah. And, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but so my parents split up when I was in high school. And there was a period of time where my mom didn't have a job, but I didn't know it. Like she never told me when she like was laid off of work, she didn't have a job. She would keep her exact same schedule. Like I would go to school. I thought she was going to work, but she was actually going to the library to try and find a job or whatever. And I learned this years later, but like she didn't give me the opportunity to just sit and complain. It was okay, cool. So now you keep going and you try and find a new one. And I think it's skills like these that have really shaped how I view problems and situations now, in which I very rarely will just sit down and be like, oh no, what am I going to do? I know. And I think that's where a lot of anxiety for people is built up, in which they just sit there and they just wonder and contemplate what's going to happen. Whereas I think the way she taught me was you go and you find and you take action and you do. You don't just sit there and dwell. It's a very dangerous place to be mentally and emotionally. So I think one of the best things she's taught me is just keep going. And it's easier said than done. I know it's easier said than done, but just because it's easier said than done doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
Wise words there. And I want to pick up on the story where we left off. So, you know, you got this, you know, job coaching clients. So then you moved into college. I believe you went to the University of Delaware, and kind of take us through your college experience. And I know obviously you got a a pretty good internship and some pretty good opportunities from there. So take me through kind of your college years.
Yeah, so I hated college. I really hated college. After high school, I took a year off. I took a year off after high school. And just, I know I said I had like 30 to 40 minutes. I have more time if you want to go longer. It's totally fine.
Sure.
I took a year off. I traveled for a year. So I went to Israel for a year. And basically, I volunteered with Holocaust survivors and just spent the year getting away from school and academics. But I still did a lot of fitness stuff too. I started my own like beach boot camps that I did for free with local Israelis. Then I almost joined the Israeli army, but my mom said she was going to kill me. So I came back to the U.S. and I went to school at University of Delaware. And I started with exercise science, but I quickly realized that, and I'm not saying every exercise science program is bad, but the exercise science program that I was in was awful, which for whatever it's worth, the exercise science program at University of Delaware is ranked incredibly highly in the United States. But I hated it. And after coaching all 4 years in high school, I got to college and not only did I coach, but I coached in an environment with very science-based coaches. Sure. They introduced me to Eric Cressy. They introduced me to Dan John. They introduced me to Pavel. They introduced me to Alan Aragon, to Lyle McDonald. They introduced me to the world of strength and conditioning that is very high level. So I get into college and these professors had never coached anybody. They were citing research that was so far outdated. It was bewildering to me. And when I would try and have educated discussions with them about why things might have changed, they didn't want to hear it and they would report me to the dean. I was like, you know what, screw this. I'm done. So I switched from exercise science to behavioral health and psychology, which turned out to be one of the best decisions I made, mainly because what I really learned through coaching at a young age was you could have the best program in the world, the best exercises, the best program design, but if someone's not following it, then it means nothing. And so I realized I wanted to figure out, 'cause the reality is everyone knows they should be exercising. Everyone knows they should be eating better, but not everyone's doing it. And so I wanted to figure out why are people making the decisions they're making in regard to their health and how can I help them make the right decisions? So I switched to behavioral health psychology, which was a huge benefit to me. And then throughout that process, I started the powerlifting team at the University of Delaware with a couple other friends of mine. I applied to intern at Westside Barbell, and I got that internship with Louis Simmons, and that was life-changing to say the least.
And I actually want to pause for a second because you have a pretty interesting story about how you got that internship. I want you to tell our listeners, because for those who don't know what Westside Barbell is, Westside Barbell, like the weakest person at that gym squats 800 pounds. Like this is the most intense place to train. And at the time, I mean, Jordan, I think you were about 120, 130 pounds. Didn't squat anywhere near that, but you end up somehow convincing Louis Simmons, this guy who's like this multiple like world champion, successful powerlifter, to let you intern there, which he doesn't let people do. So take us through that story, because I think people will really pick out a lot of value from that.
Yeah, so I was powerlifting at the University of Delaware, and I was obsessed with Louis. Like everybody who goes through powerlifting at one point in their life is obsessed with Westside and Louis, and it's just like you watch some of his videos on YouTube, and you're just so drawn in. Like, this guy is amazing. Like, I want to learn from him. So what I did is I emailed him, and I was like, hey, I would love to intern with you. I'll take the trash out. I'll clean the floors, that whole spiel again. Is like, let me come and intern with you. And he replied in the email, literally exactly what you just said. He wrote, our weakest guy squats 800 pounds. What do you have to offer? That's like, and I still have the emails, and sometimes I'll read them. And I was 20 or 21 years old. And I remember I was like, all right, I have two options. I can either come back and be very polite and explain why I should go, or I can go the other way and be very aggressive. And for whatever reason, I chose the aggressive option. And I wrote, can I swear? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
I was like, I don't give a fuck what you or anyone else in your gym squats. I'm going to outwork every single one of you. And basically that's what I wrote. And then I didn't hear anything back. And I was like so worried. I thought that I had screwed it up. but apparently I must have had my phone number in my signature or something in my email back then, because I got a phone call, and this was like a week or so later. And I didn't pick up because it was an unknown number from Ohio. And so I didn't pick up. And so I was walking out of the dining hall, Penn Cater dining hall, with my buddy Kyle. And then I get a voicemail. So I listened to the voicemail, and it's just like, Jordan, it's Louis Simmons. And I like freaked out. And basically he just went on a rant, just being like, want to talk to you about the possibility of coming to West Side. Let's see if we can hop on the phone. So we hopped on the phone the next day for over an hour. And I still couldn't, still odd for me to say that I spoke with Louis Simmons for over an hour, because I still look up to him like an idol. And he invited me to come out to West Side, and I came out to West Side, and I trained there for about 4 months. My total went up by over 300 pounds in that time frame. And he treated me like a son. Like, he took me out to eat every single day. He has a West Side barbell certification, which I believe at the time was over $1,500. He let me do it for free. I trained 2 times a day, 4 days a week, and 1 time a day, 3 days a week. So I was training about like 11 times a week with him. It was insane. And he's actually the reason why I finished college. If it wasn't for him, I would have quit, and I would have dropped out and just started and done my own thing. But he is the reason why I stayed in college, because when I was at West Side, a lot of the other lifters were encouraging me to either stay at West Side and keep lifting and just drop out. And Louis, I remember he pulled me aside one time. He was like, don't listen to the other guys, stay in college. He's like, one of the reasons I wanted you here is because you're a very good teacher, and I want you to teach these methods to people all over the world. He's like, I've been to prison. I'm tattooed head to toe. Like, I'm not socially like acceptable. They're not going to come have me speak at colleges. I want you to teach people the right way to lift. And that's why you're here. And that's why I went back to college and finished.
Wow. Such a great story about just persistence and going after what you want. And again, you provided a lot of value to him, and clearly he saw value in what you do. And again, like, the moral of the story, and it seems like your whole career path is following this, like, you're really chasing your passion and just become obsessed, and then you're willing to do whatever it takes to get what you want.
Yeah. And I think one of the best parts is I'm really doing what I love. Like, I really enjoy it. I have so much fun with it. I think a lot of, one of the phrases, and you said it several times now, I hear it all the time, is providing people value, right? And this has become huge really since Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like, give people value, give people value. I think what a lot of people have done is they've taken give people value, and what it is supposed to mean is help people. Just help people and do it in a way that you enjoy. What it has come to mean for many people is essentially, how can I give you something so then you'll be obligated to give me something, is usually now how people interpret it, even if they don't say that. And it's one of the reasons why I outlined earlier. I was like, if I give people hundreds and thousands of free workouts and they don't buy anything from me, I'm not going to care, because I'm enjoying it along the process. I think most people, when they say, I want to give you value, is what they're actually saying is, I'm going to give you something now predicated on you knowing that when I ask for you to return the favor, you're going to do it for me. That's not what Gary or anybody means by giving value. When you are giving value, you are selflessly helping them solely because you enjoy it. And that's a very important distinction to make.
Love it. Mic drop right there. That was really well said. And I think you're exactly right. Like, a lot of people go in thinking like, okay, I'm going to do something for you, but what are you going to do for me? But you are just leading with value. And in the grand scheme of things, like, if you are always leading with that value without ever expecting anything in return, good things will happen.
100%.
Love it. All right. So now you have interned with Louis Simmons. What happens next?
Then I get back to college, still hate college with every ounce of my being, but I'm going to see it through because Louis asked me to. And I apply. So at University of Delaware, they have a winter session. And so basically it's like basically a 2-month winter period where you can either take 2 months off or you could go to school for those 2 months. And I took it off and I applied to Eric Cressy's gym for an internship. This was one of the very first West Side was an amazing experience. this was one of the first times that I saw the power of social media, because by this point I was writing a blog every week. I was sharing articles on Facebook 3 times a day, every day, 5 days a week. And a lot of the articles I would share were Eric's. Now, keeping in mind, I had 2 people following me. One of them was my mother. So like no one followed me. But I was sharing and sharing and sharing and sharing. Getting an internship at Cressy's was and still is one of the hardest internships to get in the entire fitness industry. And I remember I wrote to Eric and I was like, hey, I have these like 8 weeks off. Is it okay if I come and intern? Keeping in mind that you usually have to go through a very difficult interview process. You have to do an essay. You have to do a face-to-face Skype interview. But I remember I wrote Eric, said, hey, I'm going to be back in Boston during this time frame. Could I come intern? And he responded to the effect of, yeah, I've seen your stuff on social media all the time. You can just come in and intern. There was no interview. There was no nothing. It was like, the only thing is he had seen my name so many times in his feed sharing his work that he let me come and intern, which I was so blown away by that, because like the only reason I got the internship without having to go through any other steps is because he saw me sharing his work so much. That was it. So I went and interned there, and my first day there was on that day. It was their busiest day to date with like Major League Baseball players from every team there. It was crazy. I learned more in those 2 months than I did in 4 years of college. And it was amazing. And then it's actually interesting because through that, then I got to write some guest articles on Eric's website, which really helped me grow my audience, getting his audience to see me and then driving them to my page. And it's actually very interesting because one of the people who found me through Eric's website is the person who helped me get the job with Gary. So it's all connected.
All right. So let's talk about that. So you interned for Eric Cressy, who, I mean, again, he's someone I used to follow and still follow to this day. Like, he's someone who is like one of the kind of the kings online of strength training. And so after you interned for him, what happened next? And then I want you to lead up to how you ended up getting the job as Gary Vee's trainer.
So after I interned with Eric, I went back to school. And at this point, I was writing at least 1 article a week, every week, usually more, sharing content on social media. I was getting up at 3:57 every day. And the reason it was 3:57 is because my buddy in college, who's also on the powerlifting team, Sean, we were having a competition to see who could wake up earlier. And we started off at 6 and went down to 5, then down to like 5:30 or like 4:30, whatever it was, until finally I remember he was at 4. And I was like, all right, well, I don't want to go down to 3:59. So I jumped to 3:57 just so I could wake up earlier and text and be like, up, like just so I could beat him in that contest. So I was waking up at 3:57 every day, writing and writing and writing and writing. And basically I copied the Eric Cressy model, which is just write blog articles, make YouTube videos, exercise videos of the week, like all of that stuff just for myself. And so what happened was one of the articles that I wrote, this is how I got the job with Gary. I wrote an article in 2012. I started in 2011. July of 2011 is when I started my website, and I started it when I was at Westside Barbell. In 2012, I wrote an article that is to date one of my least popular, least read articles ever. It was how to improve your posture while you're working from a desk. Just like 3 different ways to do that. Just so happened that one random person read that article and they left a comment on it asking a question. I didn't know who this person was. I'd never met them, never heard of them, didn't think I'd ever meet them in my entire life. I replied to them because I replied to every single person who commented, which wasn't that many people at the time, but I would always reply. And then through a crazy chain of events, that person who commented at that time, he was an accountant in Chicago. That was in 2012. In 2015, he became Gary Vaynerchuk's personal trainer. His name is Mike Vacanti. And he ended up moving to New York, got an internship, then through that internship met Gary. He became Gary's coach. He had a 2-year deal with Gary. Then, or maybe it was in 2014, he became Gary's coach. Then when his time with Gary was up, Gary said, who's next? Who's going to be my next coach? And Gary had a lot of postural issues. He had issues with his neck, with his back, with his hips, with his knees. And Mike was like, I think I know the guy who can help. And I was living in Israel at the time. And so I moved from Tel Aviv to New York to coach Gary. And the only reason that ever happened is because I got the internship with Eric. And then I got to write the article on Eric's site. And then Mike found me on Eric's site, then came over to my site, found my posture article, commented, I replied, and then that's when everything began.
All right, so I wanna pause right there. So much you just said. So you literally wrote articles for years, and at many times, like, no one was reading any of these articles. Like, people look at you now today and they're like, oh, he's got, over 600,000 Instagram followers. How did he do it? But you literally wrote articles like every single day, sometimes multiple times per day for years. And you just happen to have one person see it. But because you put out so much great content into the world, and you literally led with wanting to give a helping hand because you truly cared and were passionate about your head, that led to you getting this massive opportunity to being Gary Vee's coach.
That's exactly right. And I want to emphasize the years that I wrote without anybody reading my stuff. Like, even my mom got tired of reading my stuff. Like, nobody read it for a very, 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 very long time.
And look where it has gotten to today. I mean, just always leading with value. So let's start here. So now you are Gary Vee's trainer. So kind of take me through your years as a trainer. So you were his trainer, from 2017 to 19 or 16 to 19?
From May 30th, 2016 to May 30th, 2019, 7 days a week, every single day, coached Gary. Wherever he was, I was. So if he was in Hong Kong, I was in Hong Kong. If he was in LA, I was in LA. If he was in Ireland, I was in Ireland. I coached him every single day. No weekends, no vacations, no breaks for 3 years straight.
Wow. And I've seen you write about that before, but just what was that like? Like, you literally worked all the time, every single day, up early, like no off days. Like, how do you yourself, like, get yourself to do that? Was that from all the years prior of you just like working on your work ethic? Like, how did you do that and be that consistent for that long a time?
For me, it's interesting. So when I was in college, I almost dropped out a number of times. And before I got the internship with Louis at Westside, I was very close to dropping out. I never told my mom this, but I booked a one-way ticket to Israel to join the Israeli Defense Force. And the only reason I didn't go is because the next day Louis Simmons ended up calling me and having that conversation. But I remember I had a conversation with a family friend of mine. His name is Josh. He's a psychiatrist. And I remember just expressing to him how much I hated school and how much I really just wanted to quit. And he put it in terms, he said, listen, you're not going to quit. You're not going to quit because of stuff with Westside, because of, it would sort of tarnish your relationship with your mom if you quit, because my mom really wanted me to stay in. He was like, you have to think of it like detention. He's like, you're in detention right now. You can't get out. So you might as well make the most of detention and do whatever you can while you're in detention. And that's how I've approached a lot in my life whenever I've been doing something I don't really want to do or have struggled to motivate myself, but I don't have a choice. And I guess, I'm an adult. I could have a choice. I could not do it. I could not show up. I could not, but it's not something that I'm willing to give up. It's not something that I wasn't willing to not follow through on the deal I made with Gary. Basically, I was in detention for 3 years and I tried to bargain. I was like, how about we make it a 2-year deal? He was like, 3 years or nothing. And I was like, all right, that's it. I'm not going to negotiate with it. That's it. So it was 3 years, 7 days a week. And it was very difficult. I almost quit 3 times in the first 6 months because it was just excruciatingly difficult at times. And a lot of people hear that like, well, I don't understand. Like, it's just an hour a day. It's not that big of a deal. It's like, hold on. It's not just an hour a day. Number one is he lives on one side of the city. I live on the other. So already, if we're going to work out at 6 a.m., I've got to be up at 5 a.m. every day. Then, not to mention, he's traveling more than he's at home. Like, we're in airplanes and hotels more than we're in New York City. So most people, when they see you on a plane, most people only go on a plane when they go on vacation or something fun. When you're on a plane 8 times a week, it is not very fun. Not to mention, you have the rides, like the Uber to the airport is usually at least an hour. Then you're going through the lines in the airport. You have to go through security, even if you have pre-check. Then oftentimes you'll have a delay or a cancellation, or you have a layover or whatever it is, screaming baby right next to you, whatever it is. You have the flight, then you land on the tarmac. They have a delay on the tarmac, get in the airport. Then you got to walk wherever to get the cab or the taxi or the Uber, whatever, to your hotel. Then the hotel, like whatever it is, like that's the majority of your day is gone. And it's so that you can get to wherever you need to be to coach Gary for an hour. And so yes, the actual working hour with him is only an hour, but the vast majority of your day is spent traveling and doing other things, which makes it incredibly difficult to be creative and to post content and to write when you're in transit for so many hours of the day. It's like, I very rarely just had time to sit down at my desk and do work because I was always traveling. So, I mean, to answer the question, it was basically I put myself into tension and said, I'm just going to do this. I became unbelievably good at making content and working in transit. I think it's probably one of the best skills that I picked up throughout that time. Most people say they don't have time, they're so busy. The amount of time that we have available to us during like doing these little minuscule tasks that oftentimes you don't think about, it's not that you don't have the time, it's that oftentimes we're in situations that make it difficult to concentrate. So I got very good at finding the ability to concentrate in very difficult situations, and then I was able to get more work done.
I love what you just said there, that a lot of people probably just think like, oh, wow, that was so great. You're Gary Vee's trainer. And I think, it was great in many aspects, but a lot of people don't realize the lifestyle that you just brought up. Like you're literally traveling nonstop. You're up early every single day. Like you have to do it no matter what. And I'm sure that just, like you said, taught you so many lessons. So take me through, like, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what were like some of the biggest lessons or like top couple lessons that you did learn from that time and just your lifestyle experience and from Gary Vee specifically?
Yeah, I would say, I think the best lesson I learned from Gary, this is really funny. I think probably the most common misunderstanding that people have about coaching Gary is I get a lot of questions from coaches like, oh man, you must have learned like so many tactics and things from him. And I'm like, I always ask like, do you do in-person coaching? I'm like, yeah, I coach people in person. I'm like, do you coach any lawyers or do you coach any like accountants or anything? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, are you learning all these tactics and things from your lawyers and accountants during their workout sessions? And they're like, no. I'm like, then why in the fuck would it be any different with me coaching? Like I'm his coach. Where like I'm coaching him. The whole hour is based around his fitness. If I was spending the hour trying to learn tactics from him on social media, I wouldn't be a good coach. And it's actually really interesting because when I was doing the interview, when I flew from Tel Aviv to New York to interview with Gary, I asked him what was the difference between like Mike, his most recent coach, and the coach before him. And Gary said that the coach before Mike, he was much more able to essentially manipulate the workout. If Gary didn't want to work out, he was able to ask the other coach about his business, and the other coach would just talk about his business the whole time. And so he wouldn't have to work out. And that was great because Gary hates working out. So I was very, very deliberate with my coaching, where anytime Gary would ask me about my business or anything during the workout, I'd say, no, let's talk about it when the workout's over, which would very rarely happen because Gary is an unbelievably busy guy. So the best lesson that I learned from Gary is really being able to watch him, to watch how hard he works, looking at his schedule. Every minute of every day is blocked off. It's like from the shower to the drive to the office to calls, like every minute of every day, there's no wasted time. He's truly the hardest worker I've ever met in my life. And if there was a way to test who's the hardest worker in the world, and someone said like Gary works harder than literally every president and prime minister and queen and king and whatever in the world, it wouldn't surprise me. Like he works so hard, it's crazy. And in the same way that people used to think breaking the 4-minute mile was impossible until one person did it. It was like once they saw that one person do it, then many, many more people have. Seeing how hard Gary works showed me it's actually possible. So it showed me how hard I could actually work, which allowed me to work harder. That being said, it also showed me what I don't want. I mean, Gary is traveling all the time. it's an insane work schedule. It just beats you into the ground. And seeing that and also living it for 3 years showed me, I was like, I don't want it. Like, take all the pictures of the private jets and the special food and the private chefs and all this. Like, it looks great on Instagram, but living that life, that life that's required to get that, fuck no, absolutely not. It is not worth it, for me at least. So I think I learned that I could work harder, and it helped me improve my business and my work ethic, but it also showed me I don't want to work that hard that I get all this extra stuff, but I can't actually enjoy a large part of my life.
Right. And again, you brought up a number of good points there, and saying that you're not sitting there like talking business with Gary the whole time. Like, you kept him accountable. You kept him doing what he needed to do. You sacrificed a lot, and it really taught you, though, how much we are capable of as humans. And I think that's a really good takeaway there. So you trained Gary for 3 years. So you stopped with him after the 3 years. Take me through what has happened in the last few months since you stopped working with him, and kind of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so mainly I've caught up on a lot of sleep. I've caught up on a lot of sleep. It's pretty crazy. So I've been very open about how awful my fitness and my sleep was during my time with Gary. It was very, very bad. Only in the last couple months have I actually started to wake up without needing an alarm. So I stopped coaching Gary May 30th, 2019. Coached him on and off a little bit since then, but then Mike is now coaching him full time. So
Mike
since I stopped, Mike Vicanti now coaching him full time. And so it's been almost a year, we'll call it like 9 months or so, since I stopped coaching Gary like full time. And only in the past couple months have I actually really caught up with my sleep, that I actually feel very good. I feel like I don't feel super tired. Like I wake up without needing the alarm by like 7 a.m. Whereas before, like I could have slept for like 10 to 12 hours and like still felt super groggy. So it took a while to catch up on my sleep, but it feels great now, mainly focusing a lot on content as always. A lot of YouTube, a lot of Instagram, a lot of podcasts, but really just trying to do what I enjoy the most, which is just making content and teaching people and helping people.
All right. So that's what Jordan's focusing on right now. So just want to get into a little more tactical stuff right now. So, one thing that Jordan has already talked about a little bit, but that he's built up a following on social media and is working to continue to build it. So I think a lot of people right now want to start building a following or want to make their presence known online. Like, what would be your advice for those people, whether it's fitness or something else, who want to build like a social media presence?
Help people for free for years and years and years. I think there are many mistakes that people make on social media in regard to trying to build an audience. I think the main one is a massive lack of patience, like a truly outrageous lack of patience, and also an overestimation of how hard they're working. And that really comes from, like, I'm speaking like personally, I used to think I was working very hard, and I really wasn't working as hard as I thought I was. It wasn't until Gary challenged me to post 3 times a day, every day, that I really put in a lot of effort on social media. And then surprise, surprise, things started to take off. But I was spending about 8 hours a day on Instagram alone when things really, really started to take off. And that's when, like, sort of I understood the amount of effort you need to put into it. If you're posting 3 to 4 times a week and your posts are taking you less than 30 minutes to make, you're not working hard. Like, you're just not. If your posts on average take you less than 45 minutes to make, it's not working hard. Like, you cannot convince me in any way, shape, or form that you're working hard on your social media if you're taking less than an hour on average for your posts. That's just not working hard. That's like, okay, like you're checking off. Most people treat their social media like they're checking off the box. Like, okay, posted. It's like, go to your social media, look at all of your posts, read your captions, And honestly ask yourself, if you randomly stumbled upon your page, would you follow yourself? And if you're being honest, the answer is probably going to be no, unless you're spending more than an hour on your posts.
Really good right there. Like you said, do stuff for years for free without expecting anything in return, kind of like we talked about before, and literally look at your page, whether you're aiming to grow Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, like whatever. Look at your page. Would you follow yourself? Like, are you really putting in the work that's needed to grow it? You're not just doing it for a few days saying, no one's following me, I'm just going to quit. Like you talked about before, like you literally blogged for years. No one read it. And you continue to do it because you wanted to add value to people's lives. So really adding value over a long period of time without quit is really the recipe for your success.
That's it. 100%, man.
Love it. All right. So you've obviously, developed some success here, and some people may not be like into fitness. They may not be into, specifically Instagram or anything else, but they really want to build up success in their lives, no matter what industry it is. So what are like a couple of your top principles for success that you think apply across all industries?
Top principles for success. Let's see. I'm trying not to just like say the same ones over and over again, but I mean, obviously patience, right? It's an obvious one. I think one that has to be discussed is really loving what you do. The reason that I think this is so important is because if you don't love what you do, you're not going to be patient, right? And it's sort of like, if we're talking about fitness, consistency is more important than anything else, because you can lose a lot of weight doing a juice cleanse, but you're going to gain it right back if you can't keep doing it. You can lose a lot of weight eliminating carbs from your diet, but as soon as you have a carb, you're going to gain it all back. Whatever you can do consistently is the most important. I think if we're talking about success in business, you have to love it first, because if you don't love it, then you're not going to be patient. You're not going to be consistent with it. I think that's really the other area that I think really what set me apart, and where I think I had a huge advantage growing up in this industry. When I started my website, my blog that I was posting on several times a week for years and years and years, I didn't know that a business was possible. I think this is really important to understand. I did not start my website with the intention to make money online. I didn't start it with the intention to make money. The intent to make money was literally non-existent. And it's not because I'm selfless, and it's not because I'm it's solely because I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know PayPal.com existed. All I knew was that I wanted to help people online. If I knew that creating an online business was possible, I probably would have failed, because I would have been, every post, I would have had the back end intent of making more money. And when that money didn't come in, I would have been discouraged. But because I didn't know making money was a possibility, when someone would just say, hey, that was a great article, that was like getting paid. That was all I needed to make it worth it, was just someone acknowledging it. So every time someone liked it, every time someone left a comment, every time someone asked me a question, it was essentially getting paid, and I wanted to keep doing it. And I think I bring this up because it's not to say making money is bad. Making money is a great thing when you're doing it honorably, and you can do tremendous things when you have more money. You can give to charity, you can help people, you can provide for your family, you can do wonderful, wonderful things with money. The issue is when your sole purpose and goal is to make more money, you oftentimes don't have the patience to keep going, and you end up only doing things to make money, which most of us, we don't like the feeling of that. We don't like just doing things for money. Most of us like doing things to help people without expecting money in return. Again, nothing is wrong with making money, and you should charge for your services at a certain point. But when you're solely doing this from the perspective of, all right, well, I did this for you, so you got to pay me now, then you're going to burn out way more quickly.
Amen. Amen. All right. Now I want to get into the final round now and ask Jordan a few more quick hit questions here. So we know what your routine was like when you were with Gary, but take me through what your routine looks like now. Like, what's your morning routine, and what are some of your daily and weekly rituals you practice?
So coronavirus aside,
Sure. Yep.
Normal day looks like I wake up at around 6 in the morning and I go to jujitsu. So I go to the 7 a.m. jujitsu class. Then I get out of that's 7 to 8. Then I walk back from jujitsu, which is about a half-hour walk. So around 8:30, I get back, I shower, eat breakfast. So I'm usually working by 9:15, 9:30, starting off, and usually doing content. So from about 9:30 until about 12 or 1, I'm videoing, I'm making new video type content because that's when I'm most fresh and I'm excited. I'm in a really good mood. So that's like where I scheduled off. That used to be my podcast time, but then I realized it was cutting into my video time. So now I could do a podcast at 1 in the morning. I could talk for hours, so I have no issues with it. So my best like creative time is like from 10 a.m. until 1 or 2. Then after that, I do podcasting, usually between 1 to 3 a day. And then after that, odds and ends, whether it's emails or comments or going through DMs or just easier things for me to do, I sort of separate it. I have like a 1-3-5 method for scheduling out my day. So the one thing is that I have to accomplish that day. It's the biggest, most important thing I have to do, which is usually my video content. That's like the biggest impact content that I have. So that's my 1. Then 3 is I have 3 things that I can do that are like, I call them like my daily medication, if you will. It's like, it still requires effort. It still requires thought, like a podcast, for example, but it's not very difficult for me. I can do that. I could do this all day. It's very simple for me to like pop. A podcast is like popping a pill for me. Not a big deal. Then my 5 are small little things. I call them my nap time activities. Things I could do when otherwise I could be procrastinating. Answering emails, comments, DMs, stuff like that. 5 little things that I can do at any point in time that's just easy for me, doesn't require a lot of concentration or brain power. So that's sort of how I structure my day.
The 1-3-5 method. Love it. And one other important point to bring up there is you obviously have like your focus time. How do you avoid distractions there?
Man, that's tough. I don't even know if I'm that good at avoiding distractions, if I'm being honest with you. Like I have ADHD. I don't take Adderall. I get distracted easily. I'll never forget. I remember, it's so weird the things we remember from being a little kid. I remember looking at my report card from my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Callahan, and reading it with my mom. And for whatever reason, Mrs. Callahan said, Jordan needs to work on his concentration. For example, when we're doing reading time, every time someone walks in or out of the room, Jordan needs to look up and address whoever walked in or out. Like, for whatever reason, as soon as the door opened, I couldn't just look at whatever book I was reading. I had to be like, what's going on? So I get distracted very, very easily. But I think what separates me is that it's not that I get distracted and then don't do something. It's like I have my to-do list and I do it. Like, it gets done. I think that's probably the most important part. And it's one of the reasons why I love having the to-do list or the 1-3-5 method. I think most people, they don't necessarily have a list of things to accomplish, or they do have a list of things to accomplish, but it's like this big and it's impossible.
Right.
I would rather accomplish several things, 1, 2, 3 things throughout the day, every single day, than have one day where I do a lot and then many, many, many days where I do very, very little. Like, I'd rather be consistently good than inconsistently great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, and then I know you're a couple more questions here. So I know you're a big fan of self-education. What do you do to stay sharp? Like books, podcasts? Like how do you continue to learn?
I'm going to be honest, man. I just recently started getting back into reading. I really have not read much over the last few years. For me, the vast majority of my time is spent creating rather than consuming. I do spend a lot of time studying content. And what I sort of mean by that is I look at what other creators are doing who are having a really big impact. And I spend a fair amount of time studying what they do and studying their content. For me, this is a lesson I learned from Gary. Mainly there are 3 types of content, right? You have educational content, which is what I was really that's what I was born into, education with Eric Cressy and Westside, and just like all purely educational foundational content. Then you have entertaining content, right? And it's funny or whatever it is. Then the third type is where you combine the two together, where you can educate and entertain in the same piece of content. And for me, I think that's the best. That's like when you could, like, I could have the best educational content, but if someone's not being entertained by it, far fewer people will watch it. So I like to try and combine the two of them. So I always try and look at other content creators who are doing that and study how they're creating in a way that allows them to be entertaining and funny. I think in the fitness industry, someone else who does a wonderful job with it is James Smith. He's just tremendously good at it. He also has a British accent, which makes it way more entertaining, like just right off the bat.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of people on Instagram and YouTube that just do a tremendous job with it in and out of the fitness industry that I like to watch. But from a studying perspective, I just actually downloaded the book on Audible, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which I'm super excited to read. I've not read it yet, but I got it on a very high recommendation. So that's what I'm reading next.
Love it. So, obviously you lead through authenticity here and say like you haven't necessarily done a lot recently, but you are still studying things in other ways.
Yep.
All right. Love it. So 2 more questions here. So the first one, where can people find out more about you?
First, if you Google my name, you'll find a lot. It's Jordan Syatt, Syatt. Instagram, Syatt Fitness. YouTube, Jordan Syatt. Podcast, Jordan Syatt mini podcast, but it's all on Google.
Google it. Pretty easy. And then last question. I always like to finish with this one. When it's all said and done, like you're at the end of your life, how do you want to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as the guy who no matter the circumstance, no matter what happened, you could always call me and I'll always be happy and willing to help you in whatever capacity I'm able to and whatever you need. Doesn't matter if I know you or if I don't know you. Doesn't matter if we've gotten in an argument and we fell out of touch. If you need me, you call me and I'll be there.
So awesome and so amazing. A response that I don't often get from people about being the guy who's there for other people. Love it. And thanks so much, Jordan. We were so grateful to have you on the show today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.